So we're here on Daf Lamed, and we'll try to pick it up where we left off. And we have the principle called Mitzvah Ba Ba'avera. And the Gemara establishes that Mitzvah Ba Ba'avera applies even after Yerush. That means that if he stole the lulav, and we heard that the owner of the lulav declared Vaili L'chisaron Kis, which means he was Misyayish. And as a result of that Yerush, the Ganov owns, he acquires ownership over the lulav. And we would think at that point there's no longer a mitzvah b'avera, because now the Gazlan is a full-fledged owner of the lulav. There's certainly no psul of ulkachim lachem. That was solved by virtue of Yerush. But we might have thought that even the issue of mitzvah b'avera was likewise resolved by virtue of Yerush, because now the Gazlan has a full-fledged kinyan. So the chiddush here is Gazel upisech, that the Torah at the end of Tanakh combines the issue of a psul carbon lemizbeach, because it is a balmum, the animal has a blemish, and we would have said that the same thing therefore applies to gzela, that once the lulav is gazel, it has a shem gazel, and that gives it a psul mizbeach. But just like in the case of pisach lesle takanta, so too in the case of gzela lesle takanta, and that's called loshno lifnei yerush losha liachar yerush. Okay. Now, yesterday we had a long discussion about why we needed two different sources in the Torah for mitzvah b'avera. The second source was from Sefer Yeshayahu. And the upshot of that discussion was that there are two types of mitzvah b'avera. There's a mitzvah b'avera where he gets benefit from the avera, and there's a mitzvah b'avera where he doesn't get any benefit from the avera, other than the mitzvah itself that he fulfills later. And that's why we need the special pasuk from Yeshaya in the case of a korban ola, that the pasuk says, Ani Hashem, etc., sonei gezel bi ola, and a korban ola has no achila whatsoever. It's kula kolil, it's completely burnt on the mizbeach. And the chiddush is that even so, there's still mitzvah b'avera as a psul korban, despite the fact that ein lo hana, he doesn't get any benefit from. The last question that we addressed yesterday, which I still don't have a solution to that question, maybe you researched it and you found a solution, you'll let me know, and that is, how can we extrapolate from korban to every other mitzvah? Just like korban gazel is possible because of the avera of gzela, and you can't bring it on the mizbeach. Therefore, a lulav that was stolen cannot be used for the mitzvah of lulav, or dough that was stolen cannot be used for the mitzvah of challah. Maybe it's a separate halacha in karbonos. Itmar nami, this is where we left off yesterday. So let's see if we could find Itmar nami. It's approximately 1/3 down the page. And Omar Rabbi Ami Yavesh Pasul Mipnei She'ein Hadar Gazel Pasul Mipnei Dahavi Mishum Dahavi Mitzvah B'avera. And the common link between Yavesh and Gazel is that in both cases the psul is chal kol shiva, all 7 days. Yavesh is pasul all 7 days because ein hadar, ein bo hadar. The Torah describes the esrog as a pre-eitz hadar, and we equate all daled minim to esrog, and therefore just like esrog has to be hadar so too lulav and arovas hadas have to be hadar, and a lulav yavesh is not hadar. And even though the last 6 days of Sukkot, the mitzvah of lulav is only d'Rabbanan, zeichel and migdash, but nevertheless, you require the same definition and entity of daled minim. You can't take a lemon on the second day of Sukkot. You have to take an esrog. And presumably it means you have to take an esrog that's kosher for the mitzvah of esrog on the first day. And that means it's got to have hadar. So on the second day and the entire balance of Sukkot, we need hadar based on this equation to esrog and the assumption that the Rabbanan will require the same essential entity on the balance of the 6 days. And that essential entity is hadar. Yavesh is excluded. Now we jump over to Gazel, and Gazel, like Yavesh, is possible all 7 days, even though the last 6 days are D'Rabbanan, and even though there's no psul of lachem on the other 6 days, and even if it's after Yeush, nevertheless the lulav is possible kol shiv. And that's based on mitzvah ba'avev. And here we see it explicitly in this piece that was studied in the Beis Medrash and transmitted throughout generations here of Itmar Nami, Omer Rabbi Ami Yavesh Pasul, Mipnei She'ein Bo Hadar, Gazel Pasul Mishum David Mitzvah Haba B'Avev. Now, the premise of this Gemara with the word Nami, Itmar Nami, means that we're going to support the presentation of Rabbi Yochanan that the lulav hagazel in our Mishnah is pasul midin mitzvah baba vera from this statement of Rabbi Ami. However, lamana emes, in truth, it could be possible that mitzvah baba vera does not apply to a mitzvah d'Rabbanan. It only applies to a mitzvah d'oraisa. Because if you look at Itmar Nami, it just says that Gazel is possible, we should have a mitzvah baba vera, but maybe that's only on the first day when the mitzvah of lulav is doraisa. But on the balance of Sukkot, where the mitzvah of lulav is only d'Rabbanan, perhaps mitzvah baba vera is not a psul. And yet Rabbi Yochanan assumes, and the Gemara is quoting Rav Ami as support for Rabbi Yochanan, that the lulav hagazel, which is a mitzvah baba vera, is pasul kol shiva. And in fact, that's why Rabbi Yochanan introduced the psul of mitzvah baba vera. He was bothered by the fact that the Mishnah combines yavesh with gazel, and yavesh is pasul kol shiva. Gazel, the Gemara said, should only be possible on the first day because it's stolen and it's not yours and it's not lachem. And therefore the Mishnah had no right to combine Gazel with Yavesh. But the answer is no. Rabbi Yochanan says that the Mishnah's analogy between Gazel and Yavesh is justified because of mitzvah baba vera. So Rabbi Yochanan certainly held that mitzvah baba vera passes even a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, which is lulav kol shiva, the balance of Sukkot. But does Rabbi Ami agree with that? I don't know. It's not crystal clear. Maybe Rabbi Ami would say that there's a fundamental difference between the first day of Sukkot, where lulav is doraisa, as opposed to the balance of Sukkot, where lulav is d'Rabbanan. And when the psul of mitzvah baba vera was formulated, it was only formulated vis-a-vis a mitzvah d'oraisa, which means lulav hagazel is pasul on the first day, but it's not pasul on the balance of the days, which is only d'Rabbanan. And that could fit in very well with Rabbi Ami. But perhaps what the Gemara is trying to imply here is that since Rabbi Ami, like our Mishnah, integrates Yavesh and Guzzle into one ruling, one formulation, and they're both possible, then it may be that the psul should apply equally to both. And just like the psul of Yavesh certainly applies kol shiva, because it's not hadar, so to the psul of Guzzle, insofar as it's mitzvah avera, is a disqualification for all 6 days, or the balance of the 6 days, even though it's only D'Rabbanan. Upliga de Rabbi Yitzchak, the Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmani Amar Shmuel. So now we get up to the sheet of Shmuel. Shmuel is going to reject Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan has presented the view that mitzvah baba ver passes even the mitzvah d'Rabbanan of lulav kol shiva, and here's where Shmuel puts his foot down, and he says, "Lo shanu, when do you say that there's a psul of Guzzle that's only el b'yontif rishon? It doesn't belong to him. It's stolen property. How could he then be mekayim the mitzvah ulakachtem lachem? Aval b'yontif sheni." Interesting that he uses the term yontif sheni. Yontif sheni here means in the balance of sukkahs. Mitov sheyotze b'shol yotze b'lulav hagazul. If I borrow your lulav on the first day, can't be yotze. It's not mine. It's yours. You're the mashil, I'm the shol. But if I borrow your lulav on the second day, and even though the lulav is not mine because it belongs to the mashil and not to the shoel, nevertheless, I can be yotze my mitzvah d'Rabbanan of lulav kol shiva. Because the Torah only requires lachem on the first day. Now again, you could ask me the following question. Well, if you tell me that Yavesh is pasal kol shiva, even in the mitzvah d'Rabbanan of the last 6 days, we're going to disqualify a lulav hayavesh, then the same thing should apply to Guzzle. Or forget about mitzvah baba ver. Leave out mitzvah baba ver. Shaul is pasal on the first day. Guzzle is pasal on the first day. And maybe, therefore, we should pasal Guzzle for all 7 days. But the Gemara says that you yotzi with Shol. If you yotzi with Shol, it means that the Rabbanan, when they established the mitzvah of lulav, they did not impose the restriction or the condition of lachem. But yet, hadar does apply. And a lulav that doesn't have hadar is possible even for the mitzvah d'Rabbanan. But a lulav that doesn't have lachem is kosher. Why? Can anybody figure that out? Why is it when it comes to hadar, we're going to assume that that is a critical requirement of lulav for all 7 days? But when it comes to lachem and the requirement of bailus as a condition, that only applies on the first day and not on the rest of the drabbanos. Why is that? Yeah,
the Yavesh is in the Chetza. In the actual
Yavesh is
in the it's in the physical lulav itself, and theft. The bias is a construct. It's not in the physical.
It's external.
Lulav.
It's not in the. It's not in the lulav itself. Excellent. You took the words out of my mouth, but you said it better than me. There's certain psulim that define the object itself. What is a lulav? Like Shakespeare asked that question, right? What's in a lulav? Well, what's in a lulav is hadar. Hadar is a description of the lulav. If it's yavesh and it's not hadar, it's not a lulav. Call it a lulav if you want to sell it on the market, but it's not a lulav. because the Torah adds the word hadar to define not only lulav, but all daled minim. They are defined in their very essence by a chefts of hadar. Then you have other conditions, shall we say the Maisa Netilas Lulav, and the Maisa Netilas Lulav has to be your own Lulav. The Lulav doesn't change at all, whether it's yours or mine. But the Netila means Lekachtem, what kind of Lekicha? Lachem. It's got to be a Lachem that you have ownership. But that is an external condition, a requirement that's not in the Chefza of the Lulav. When the Rabbanan established Lulav called Shiva, they required a Lulav which has the exact identity of a Lulav that is required for a Lulav on the first day. But when they established the Lulav de Rabbanan called Shiva, they did not impose those conditions that are external to the Lulav and that apply only to the Maisa Netil. That the Netil has to be Shalachem, Mishalachem. So far, so good. I would like to bring a proof. Why did the Rabbanan establish Lulav called Shiva? Why wasn't it enough? On the first day. So the Gemara is going to tell us later on that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai made a takana mishum zeichel lemigdash. In the Migdash, the Torah commands us to take the Lulav all 7 days. Vushtate, where does it say in the Torah that there's a separate halacha in Migdash? And that now Lulav becomes a mitzvah called Shiva. And the pasuk is Usmachtem lachem shivas yomim. Lifnei Hashem alkeichem shivas yomim. The Gemara says, how do you fulfill Lifnei Hashem? It's got to be in the Migdash. How do you fulfill Usmachtem lachem? It's with the Lulav. The Lulav now becomes a vehicle for fulfilling the mitzvah Usmachtem. But who has to take the lulav? The lulav has to be taken in the Beis HaMikdash. It's a Chovas Mikdash. And if it's a Chovas Mikdash, there's no din of lachem. So that when the Rabbanan required lulav called Shiva as a duplicate, so to speak, to replicate the lulav of the Mikdash, then the lulav of the Mikdash doesn't require lachem. Neither does lulav called Shiva require lachem. Definition of the lulav, hadar, that's a different story. Now, what's clear from Shmuel? What's clear from Shmuel is that there's no psul of mitzvah baba vera, because the psul of mitzvah baba vera, loshna yantiv risha, loshna yantiv sheni, there's no difference between the first day or the second day, whether it's doraisa or rabbanan. So how could Shmuel say that a lulav hagazel is kosher for the balance of sukkahs, unless he rejects mitzvah baba vera? Because if he accepted mitzvah baba vera, it would apply kol shiva all 7 days. And basically, according to Shmuel, the only problem with lulav hagazel is bailus, and that problem only exists on the first day. There was never a condition of bailus that was imposed for the balance of sukkahs. Mitoch sheyotze b'sha'ul, yotze nami b'gos. So Shmuel is not willing to disqualify the lulav under the condition, under the category of mitzvah baba vera. Masechet Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. There are a number of Nachmans here and a number of Yitzchaks. We got to make sure we don't get confused. The Makshon here is Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. And the one who's being attacked by this kasha is Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachman, not Nachman, but Nachmani. And now we go back to our Mishnah. Lulav hagozel vayovish pasul. The Mishnah is implying hashol kosher. Why didn't the Mishnah tell me a bigger chiddush? Not only if he didn't steal the lulav, not only if he stole the lulav, but even if he didn't steal the lulav and he borrowed the lulav kedasu, that he had permission to borrow the lulav. Nevertheless, the lulav is pasul. That's not what it says in the Mishnah. The Mishnah says that lulav hagazel is pot, implying hasha'ul, when he acquired, or shall we say, had access to the lulav kedasu kedin sha'ul kosher. And as we said, because otherwise the Mishnah would have told me a bigger chiddush, that even if there was no illegality in his possession of the lulav, he got it kedasu kedin through the mashil, but nevertheless he cannot be yotze. So apparently he could be yotze with shol. Now, what day of Sukkah are we talking about? If we're talking about the first day of Sukkah, the Torah says l'kachtem lachem. It's impossible to postulate that shol would be kosher. Amos. Ilem v'yontif rishon haksiv lachem mishal lachem v'hai lavdi deu. Shol is not yours. Elolav. But by process of elimination, we have no choice but to assume that b'yontif sheni we talk about the balance of yontif, and the Rabbanon never imposed that requirement of lachem with regard to the balance of sukkahs. Ukitani, and nevertheless it says gazel pasul. So it means that gazel is pasul where shol is kosher. Now, shol can't be kosher on the first day. It says lachem. It must be talking about the balance of sukkahs, and shol is kosher, whereas lulav hagazel is pasul. So how could Shmuel tell me that the problem of gazel is only one of bailus, which is not a problem for the balance of sukkahs, and therefore gazel would be kosher for the balance of sukkahs from Yontif Sheni and on? But what about misabah bavera? And the fact that shol in the Mishnah is kosher implies that that gazel is pasul. So at this point in the sugya, the Gemara is going to have to insist that shol. Well, let's see the Gemara inside. Amar Rav, li'olam b'yantif rishon. So then there's a problem. Why was shol left out of the Mishnah? Shol is not lachem. And the Mishnah only mentions gazel. Lomi boykon. Lomi boy shaul delavdi dehu. In the case of gazel, we might have didehu, because as we established before, there is an entity called, a halachic legal entity called kinyonik zela. And in theoretical terms, the gazel might be the proud owner, or not so proud owner, of something that he stole. Shaul, on the other hand, clearly does not have bailus. Gazel might have bailus. So which is a greater chiddush? If I tell you that a l'kachtem lachem b'yom harishon, Shaul is pasul, Gazel is pasul, which of the two is a greater chiddush? Which one is certainly pshita that it's pasul? because of lochem. What?
Gazul. Gazul.
Gazul is partial? No, I'm going to tell you Gazul is not partial.
That's how so.
Because Gazul lends itself to kinyanim.
Oh.
The chiddush now would be that even Gazul is possible. Shaul, as we say in Yiddish, is upgeret. I don't even have to tell you that Shaul is possible. The Torah says, "L'kachtem lachem," and we're in the Yom, we're holding now Yom Rishon. But Gazul might be kosher. There might be kinyan gzeil. Like, for example, let's say the nigzal was misyayish. So we said that the gazlan could be kona after the gzela after the nigzal was misyayish. So you want to be medaik, hey, you know what? The Mishnah says that gazul is possible, implying that shol is kosher. And therefore you're going to prove to me that we're talking about the other days of Sukkot. No. I'm going to argue that we're talking about the first day of Sukkot. And shol is possible. And the reason for that is because there's no lachem. And that's pshita. But the Mishnah wants to tell me that even gazul is possible. Even gazul is lacking in lachem. Lomi boy cover lomi boy shaul. The lav di deu. Shaul clearly has no shaykhs to owning the object. He's only borrowing it. Avol gazul. Ema stam gzeliyesh bailami. Ukidi de dami. When a person realizes that his possession was stolen, he doesn't have much hope or optimism that he'll be able to regain possession over the guzzle. You know, it was stolen by a mafioso. How am I going to track him down? How am I going to prove? And I have to go through the court system. Forget it. In Yiddish, we say, Tzol Zayin HaKapara. That's called Yesh. Is therefore Kididei Domi, maybe now, since Stam Gzela's Yesh Bailim, he could be Yotze with the Lulav HaGazel on the first day. And it's called Lachem. Kamashmala. Mishnah says no. The Gazel, like the Shol, is possible on the first day. Only on the first day. Because we're going now according to Shmuel. So why tak is it possible on the first day? We don't have mitzvah baba very according to Shmuel. So what are we left with? We're left with lachem. But it is lachem. It's after yesh. So if you take a look at, we could look here in the Rashi first, and then we'll go back to the Masifta. But looking in Rashi, Yesh Bailamu, Sharei Bofanov Hu Gozlo Miyodo Vein Lo Koch Lahatzi. Mashmalon the Ad the Shamino and the Yayish Lo Konile. We have to know for sure with a verbal declaration that he was Messiah. To Memor Omar, Hashta hu de takif minoi lemocher tafsinole bidin. Interesting. The Nigzal, according to the Maskon, according to the Kamashmal, has a much more optimistic attitude towards retrieving his gzela. You know, right now he's got the upper hand. He's threatening me with a knife. I have to let him steal my lulav. But I'm going to get him. Down the line, I'm going to tfisna le bedina. Well, what tfisna le bedina? Tfisna le means to grab onto him. Take him by the lapel and schlep him into Bezdin. Well, I'm not going to do that, but the Shliach Bezdin will make sure that he shows up in Bezdin. So therefore, the Nigzal has total confidence that he'll retrieve his stolen object. And there was no Yerush. There's no Yerush, there's no Lachem, and you cannot be Yotzi the mitzvah on the first day. Haven shaloha yeyush bailam lo kana gazlan es halula v'yenu shalov and yotze bo yidei chovasa b'yom rishon shel sukkos. As far as the balance of sukkos, then Shmuel maintains that he could be yotze. There's no requirement to lachem. Shol is kosher. Gazel is kosher, and there's no psul of mitzvah boba. Now, in truth, you'll see in note number Chaf Ches that this issue about whether or not the Nigzal is optimistic and he's holding out hope that he'll get back his object that was stolen, or whether or not the Nigzal Stam Yeush Bailan, he's going to be Messiahish, is a machlokes in the Gemara between Rab Shimon and the Chacham. Now, this machlokes between Rab Shimon Chachamim about whether Stam Gzeil Yesh Bailam Havi really originates in Masechet Kelim, but it's quoted in the Gemara Bava Kama Kuf Yud Dalid Omid Aleph. So if you take a look in footnote number Chaf Ches, the last line on the right column, he says, Das Rabbi Shimon Shestam Gzeil Yesh Bailim Ach Bestam Gneva Eina Bailim Misyash. V'chachamim sovrim lehepuch shestam gneva yesh bailim ach lo bestam gzeila. So, in the case of a ganav, you have to search and find the ganav. He stole something stealthily. Case of a gazlan, he did it to the light of day, at gunpoint. He's an armed robber. And according to the Chachamim, there's less of a Yeush in the case of a Gazlan. You would have thought, oh no, this mafioso guy, it's like Arafat in the United Nations, he's got all his bullets there, you know what I mean? And you should certainly be Messiah. You don't want to mess around with this Gazlan. But there's one advantage. And that is that you know and identify him, you've seen him, and you know who to go after and to try to get him into the courts, into Bezdin. So the Chachamim against Reb Shimon hold that in the case of Stam Gzela, Leka Yesh B'ayim, there's no Yesh B'ayim. And Al Gemara of Shmuel reflects that sheet of the Chachamim in Masechet Bava Kama that Stam Gzela Leka Yesh B'ayim. Now, Rava, I mean, there's a lot of Bekiyas here in Masechet Kiddushin Daf Nun Beis, actually paskins like the Chachamim. Which means that Stam Gzela Leka Yeyish Bailam. So that would really fit in nicely with our sugya, at least according to Shmuel. That the Gazlan was not Kona the Lulav. And therefore he cannot be Yotzi on the first day. Well, let's go according to Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon holds Stam Gzela Yeyish Bailam, which means that the Gazlan was Kona. So why is Gazel Pasul? It seems to me that we have no choice but to assume Mitzvah Baba Vera. So that's against Shmuel. Because Shmuel is holding Stam Gzela Lav Yeyish Bailam. But if we hold like Reb Shimon that Stam Gzela Yeyish Bailam, then we cannot accept Shmuel. Because if Stam Yeyish Bailam in Gzela, then the Gazlan owns it, and there's no psul of lachem, and Shmuel rejects the psul of mitzvah b'aver. So first of all, let's reiterate what we said by looking in Chaf Zayin, and he says it the way we said it, that according to Shmuel, the only possible candidate psul in the case of Gazel is lachem, and that would depend upon whether there's yesh bailam. However, mitam misabab avera eino posol, sharei anu oskim bedas Shmuel she'en lulav Gazel nifsa mitam misabab avera. So Shmuel rejects the psul of misabab avera here in lulav Gazel. Maybe Shmuel holds it's a separate din in Kodesh. So I want to take a peek now at footnote number Chavtes on the left column. And we'll see how it goes. Hiksha Maram. Modeh Shmuel b'mitzvah doraisa. Oh. You see, there are two ways of understanding Shmuel. Shmuel might be rejecting the psul of mitzvah baba vera outright; it just doesn't exist. Or Shmuel might be differentiating between a mitzvah doraisa and a mitzvah d'rabbanan. And whereas Shmuel concedes that there's a psul of mitzvah baba vera in a doraisa mitzvah, he is unwilling to expand and apply mitzvah baba vera's psul to a d'rabbanan mitzvah. And that latter explanation of Shmuel is maintained by Tosfos. So it means Shmuel accepts the principle of mitzvah b'aver. He has that psul. He concedes that it exists, and we derived it from Sukkah. But he limits it to a mitzvah dorais. Is Ketzad mefaresh rava l'shitaso is divrei Mishnah sheshansa gazul v'yein tzarich lomer shol. So the bigger chiddush here is that gazul is possible. Why? Because gazul lends itself to kinyanim, and it might be lachem, and yesh might afford a kinyan on the part of the gazul. Shol is for sure upgrade. It's certainly possible because he doesn't own it. But wait a second. We're talking about Yontif Rishon now. That's a mitzvah doraisa. So let me ask you the question: Why does the Mishnah mention Gazel and not Shol? The Gemara says, according to Rava Im Shaninu Lulav HaGazel Pasul Kol Shkein Lulav Shol Pasul. Hariyesh Makom Loma Dafka Gazel Pasul B'Yontif Rishon. So it sounds to me like he's raising the possibility that Shol might be kosher. Is he oblivious to the interpretation of lachem, mishal lachem? That's what I have to assume. So let's just review the question of the Maran. If you're like Tosfos that Shmuel agrees that on a mitzvah regarding a mitzvah doraisa, there's a psul of mitzvah baba vera. So then maybe Gazel is possible on the first day, but not Shol. Which I think means that he's rejecting the whole derivation of Mishal Lachem. Lachem Mishal Lachem. Now, the Gemara tried to argue that Gemara tried to argue that what? That if Gazel is possible, then it goes without saying that Shol is possible. Because in the case of Gazel, it was as far to say it's kosher because Tam Gzela, Lav Yesh Bailim. But why can't I argue just the opposite? That shol is kosher. And Gazel is possible because of mitzvah baba avera. Because on the first day it's doraisa. And even Shmuel would agree that there's a psul of mitzvah baba avera regarding a mitzvah doraisa.
I mean, isn't it the case because of Lachem, we know Shaul and Gazela are both Aser. Now, if there's Yeush, that doesn't affect the Shaul, that would affect the Gazela. So when there's Yeush, then we've got the second mitzvah haba bavera to make it possible.
But Steve, you see, he doesn't tell you, at least as far as I can see it, maybe you'll see it differently, he doesn't tell you what to do with the word lachem, according to this analysis. So if we, let's say, bracket the word lachem for a moment, then it could be that shol is kosher. What do we do with the word lachem? I don't know. But gazel will be possible because of mitzvah baba avera. And we're dealing with Yom Rishon, which is Doraisa, and we're dealing with Tosfos, who says that even according to Shmuel, in a mitzvah Doraisa, there's a psul of mitzvah baba avera. But again, what the piece of the puzzle, as you point out very well, that's missing here is what do we do with the pasuk lachem? We're like totally oblivious to the pasuk lachem. He says, "Yesh makom lomer shedafka gazel pasal b'yom rishon mishum shemitzvah sulu b'yom rishon imi Torah b'zeh mod Shmuel shenifsal mishum mitzvah baba avera ach lulav shaul she'ein bo mitzvah baba avera yehei kosher." I mean, I'm just reading the words. He doesn't address the question. What do you do with the pasuk lachem? I can't figure that one out. You know what I think he might mean? I wish he would have spelled it out. Yeah, lachem means it's got to be yours. But what is ownership? Perhaps a shoel is considered like an owner because he has rights to use the object. The mashil, the original Bible, doesn't, he forgoes or forfeits his rights to use the object. So all the hanos and all the benefits and all the shimushim and the use of the animal all now is transferred over to the shoel, to the shoel. Maybe the shoel is considered lachem, he has biles. In the case of a gazel, his problem is mitzvah baba avera. I don't know. He doesn't spell that out. So let's just make a note of what we got up to. We're up to Omar Le Rav Huna on Daf Lamed Omid Aleph, which is, almost at the bottom of the Omid. How many lines is it? 2 lines before the end of the Omid. Now, who's going to be here tomorrow? Steve, you'll be here tomorrow? That's it. Am I right? Jeff, you're not here on Tuesdays.
Yeah, that's correct.
That's correct. Wednesday, John is not here. Steve could be here. I don't know, Jeff, are you here on Wednesdays ever? I always forget.
I should be, yes.
Should be. So then let's make up that the next meeting we'll have, B'li Neder is on Wednesday. And if there's any change, I'll let you know. And I have a class at 11 o'clock on Ramban in Sefer Mitzvahs. And we could learn B'li Neder Sanhedrin for a half hour now. And so I'm gonna just put this on hold.